Hey, what's happening, Cincinnati Bengals fans? Welcome to Inside the Jungle. We are back for episode 4 of the big show. Talk about a big letdown, right? Everybody was excited. The Bengals got their first win. Then they head to Baltimore and come crashing back down to reality. So we'll talk about that game. We'll talk about Joe Burrow, as we always do here on this show. AJ Green saying some interesting things. At least we think he's saying some interesting things on the sidelines during that game. So we'll try our best to do our best lip reading here on the podcast. And then, of course, we'll wrap things up looking ahead to this week's game against the Indianapolis Colts. If you're watching us live on YouTube and Twitter, thanks so much for tuning in. Tonight, we are live on Facebook for the first time. So if you want to check us out on Facebook, head on over to facebook.com/inside the jungle. And of course, you can always email us insidethejunglepod@gmail.com. Let's welcome in my guys this week. Mickey, how are you? Did you have a good weekend?
It was pretty good. I mean, it could have been better, but yeah, it was a good weekend with family, kids, sports, not so much the Bengals.
I was in enemy territory once again, this time in Cleveland this weekend for a soccer game. So 2 weeks ago was Pittsburgh. This weekend was Cleveland, and I'll be in Indy this week. What is going on?
I mean, every city you're going to, Nick, has good football teams. Maybe you should make some trips to Cincinnati.
Maybe you're right. Glad to have you back on the show. We'll also welcome back into the show Beam Me Up Scott Bancel. Scott, how are you? Did you have a good weekend?
Sans the Bengals game, I had an excellent weekend. Gorgeous weather. Good time watching soccer games as well for me. Just I watched the Bengals on delay, so it only took an hour of my Sunday.
Nice.
To 3 hours.
Well, good to have you back on the show. I'm looking forward to getting your hot takes as always when it comes to the Bengals. And certainly last but not least, over on the left coast, the best coast, the background king himself, Anthony Cosenza. Hey, C, how are you, bud?
I'm doing all right. Kind of doing a little solo dad duty here. So you're seeing probably a little munchkin popping his head up in and out of here. So, but I'm doing okay. Despite what happened this last Sunday. How are you guys?
Well, we wouldn't have it any other way, right? We're a family-friendly show here on Inside the Jungle. So glad to see your little one hop in here. He's not the first one out of our family members to do that. So
yeah, I know. He thinks he's the star of the show here. So whatever.
That's all right. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about this game, shall we? The Bengals over the weekend dropping a rough one to the Baltimore Ravens. If it wasn't for a Randy Cavs field goal late, like we all predicted would happen, except in the losing fashion, the Bengals would have been shut out. Fantasy owners be damned. So, Mickey, I'll start with you. I mean, where do we start?
I mean, let's start with Burrow. I mean, I think this was a bad game. A bunch of misses, a few bad decisions. Again, he's not getting helped by the line. We had no running game. We just didn't look like we knew what we were doing against the Ravens. But, yeah, I mean, we could pick on any part of this. And, I know we're going to get more into, certain specifics, but name a player that had a good game.
Well, that is off the top of my head pretty tough to do. At least from the offensive side of the ball, right? I think defensively they were better than we thought they'd be. Now, the numbers probably are a little bit misleading because the Ravens had short fields, right? So the total yardage was, they didn't need to rack up 400 or 500 yards in this game because, they were getting the ball inside our own 35 for the most part.
And we were seeing pressure too, just no finishing. Like we couldn't finish anytime, we'd get people in the backfield. And so that's just a common theme this season. It seems like if you have a chance to, take down the quarterback, you got to do it. Like you can't just be back there, kind of, shake his hand as he runs by.
Yeah. So from an offensive standpoint, Scott, I mean, Mickey brings up a good point about Burrow. Not his finest performance in the orange and black. Also, probably not a surprise going up against this Baltimore Ravens defense. They're tough for a reason. That's why they were 14-2 a year ago.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say this is the first time we've seen Burrow look like a rookie, right? I can't say it's surprising against Baltimore. I think we were all a little bit surprised just because he hasn't looked like a rookie thus far. But he went up against a tough defense with a terrible offensive line, no run game, and he looked like a rookie. And I think, that's something we'll probably see a few times throughout the year. But, 5 games in to have one game looking like a rookie, I look at this one like Bill Belichick said, on to Cincinnati, on to Indianapolis with this one.
Yeah. And what's more surprising about this too, Anthony, is I think that Burrow had been so good against the blitz, right? He was one of the better passers in the NFL this year when facing a blitz. But the Ravens just had everything covered, from the hot reads to they just really never even gave Burrow a chance to get comfortable back there.
They didn't. And if you saw the matchup going in, if you kind of looked at the matchup a little bit going into this, the Ravens this year have problems generating, and it was still the same case against the Bengals, have problems generating pressure with just their 4-man fronts. That's not really traditionally what they're used to. They had to blitz a lot of different guys, and the Bengals had 0 answers for it up front. So we can say, yeah, and there were 7 sacks on the day, and I think 3 by Pro Football Focus were credited to Joe Burrow by kind of running into pressure. There was kind of a little bit of a lack of pocket awareness, which was a little concerning. But, I mean, he's going to do that, right? I mean, he likes to ad-lib, and he's going to try and create, and sometimes it'll cause extra hits, it'll cause sacks. But, the offensive line and the protection schemes were not up to snuff. I was actually pretty pleased with the defense from a macro kind of perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, they held Lamar Jackson to 183 total yards. You do that, and, I mean, they had an interception. They had an opportunity for at least 2 more that were gift wrapped to them. And the interception the Bengals got, their offense didn't do anything in terms of getting the points. So, it's kind of they finally ran into a really good team, and some of the lack of capitalizing on a team's mistakes came back to bite them. I saw this tweet. I just thought it was interesting, Nick. It's by a guy named @Goat Joe Burrow, and it's the EAOUX. He said he kind of compiled some stats. He's sacked 22 times, been hit 50 times, and pressured 65 times so far this year, and all of those lead the NFL. So take that for what you will.
Nice. David Carr 2.0 at this point. Not good. Gentlemen, if I were to tell you that the Bengals would leave this game over the weekend limiting Lamar Jackson to 4 yards rushing, what would you say right now? You'd say probably think that this game would be competitive and close, and the Bengals, were in it, but just not the case.
Yeah, I mean, it would make me nervous too, like seeing that. Like, did he not have to do much?
Well, he didn't.
Because the rest of the game was fluid. So, yeah, I mean, I see both sides. But, I mean, other things, right? When you look at, like, what Duvernay and Dobbins did, they both had 1 carry. Both, one was for 34 yards, one was for 42 yards. We weren't, we might have stopped, Jackson, but we weren't stopping anyone else, with these – not running their running back right up the middle. And so it just seemed like we were outcoached, right? Like the when they put those specific plays in, the Duvernay one, which was, kind of like the fake handoff, and then, send him off to the races up the sideline. It just seemed like we had no clue what was going on there. And so we were definitely outcoached in that aspect of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you take anything positive away from any of this over the weekend, I still go back to I thought the defense played better. I honestly thought they played better than I was expecting, right? But again, the defense was put under pressure the entire day with short fields, and I thought the fact, another positive, Logan Wilson played pretty well. Probably should have had 2 or 3 interceptions. He did get the 1. But he's showing to be a really quality draft pickup by the Bengals, which you haven't really been able to say a whole lot lately. So from that standpoint, I really liked what I saw defensively. Let's talk about the loss of DJ Reader. And by the way, Reader is not the only high-priced free agent that the Bengals have lost this the season. I think it's 4 now that they brought in this offseason that are currently not playing or won't be playing. So Reader's out for the year. Has that been confirmed yet? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's a big loss, especially when you consider they just got Geno Atkins back. They probably shared the field 3 or 4 times this weekend. That's so disappointing. The one time, Anthony, when we did this show back in the day, you were harping on this team to spend in free agency. Harped on it, right? That was your thing. And they finally did it.
Yeah.
And now here we are. It's just like, wow.
Yeah, and you got to wonder what the team's focus on that's going to be going forward, right? I mean, are they going to now be totally gun shy because there's 4 guys on IR? I think I threw out a tweet earlier this week. They had basically 7 major outside acquisitions in free agency. 5 of them will have missed at least 1 game to this point, some numerous, and 4 of them are on IR with Reeder and Waynes and Daniels. I mean, so now it's just like, oh my gosh, they finally spend the money, and then it's just they can't get out of their own way on that, whether it's luck, bad luck, whatever you want to call it. But I just worry a little bit. So does that mean they're just going to totally pull the reins back in over the next couple of years in free agency and not spend anymore? I don't know. But regardless, like to your point, Nick, not having Reeder really play at all with Geno Atkins is kind of a crime. Not having Waynes lining up opposite of William Jackson is kind of a crime. It's really worked out in a really unfortunate way for the team.
Yeah. And by the way, gents, we can sit here and complain and woe is me about these injuries, because every NFL team really is dealing with it, right? I mean, it is what it is at this point, but this one just seems the loss of Reeder really was kind of a big old gut punch, Scott. I mean, because he's really from a defensive line standpoint been the consistent player there up front for the Bengals.
Yeah, I think like AC said, the disappointing part is that you never get to see him and Atkins together, right? That's what we've been waiting for this whole time. Reeder's specialty was stopping the run. We always said what would Atkins look like if you got an actual run stopper next to him, and I was excited to see that. So to not really get to see them play together is a shame. That being said, they were bottom 2 in the league stopping the run, even with him in there. So I guess the question becomes, are they that much worse without him? I mean, I think they are, right? But the fact of the matter is they still weren't very good with him. So, they'll have to piece it together. Hopefully Daniels can come back and him and Atkins can play together and do a little bit of damage.
Well, the good news is Reeder signed a 4-year deal. So, he's going to be back next year. So unfortunately for the Bengals defensive line, DJ Reeder out for the year on what looked like not that significant of a play, right? He was just stopping the run up the middle and kind of fell backwards when he was making a tackle. And then it just really disappointing. Speaking of disappointing, gentlemen, 2 weeks in a row, I made a bold prediction that AJ Green would get 100 yards receiving. He ain't even close. And over the weekend, we saw him appear to utter the words, "If you're not going to use me, trade me." Whoa, that went from 0 to 60 pretty quickly, right? When you saw the viral video, what were your initial thoughts, Mickey? Because AJ has never been that guy to complain. He's never been that guy to really voice his displeasure when he easily could have, right? But this one kind of was just like, whoa, oh wow, we're there already. Like it's here now.
Yeah. So my thoughts on that, Nick, are we also saw during the game he was overthrown a little bit by Burrow, but it looked like he gave up on that, which is another thing we don't see from AJ, right? And so my initial thought was, man, is this guy just done? But then when I started thinking about the Dunlap situation and how he found out.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that, man.
How he was demoted, not from the coaches. Part of me is thinking that these coaches they're just in over their head, right? And so AJ's probably not getting the communication he's used to. He's, he probably wants to be part of this. Maybe he's healthier than we know, and just the game plan is that bad. Who knows all the different pieces that are happening? But if he's that frustrated, and he didn't really voice it to the media, right? Like there happened to be a camera when he was talking to a player, and people or a coach, and people say all kinds of things during the game in the heat of the moment. But part of that clip has me wondering, are we mismanaging this team so bad that the players are losing faith? Like, the way that the Dunlap situation was handled leads me to believe that the way they're handling AJ could add to that. And so, if he sees the ship going down, he's like, man, if I'm not even going to be a part of this, trade me. He knows he doesn't have a ton of time left, and we're obviously not using him the way we used to, or probably should. I don't know. I think there's a whole backstory to this that we don't know about.
Oh, for sure. And to be fair, like, look, AJ has not been getting the targets, right? And when he's been getting the targets, he's not open, very tightly covered. What do you make of this situation, Scott? A, are you surprised? And B, what are the Bengals even going to get for him now?
Nothing. I mean, I'm surprised. I'll say this. I don't know how to read lips. I watched that. I can't tell what he's saying.
Oh, come on now.
If he's saying trade me, I agree with him. I agreed with him last year. I've agreed with that the last 2 years. They should have traded this guy. Look, I like AJ Green, but I gave the stat last week that through the last 36 games, he had 60 catches for 820 yards. Now that's the same stat through 37 games. I don't know if he's done or not, but we talk about the ball wasn't going his way. Well, it wasn't going his way because he hasn't been open. And when it has gone his way, he hasn't caught it. So, he can be frustrated all he wants, but he's not producing. The same with Carlos Dunlap. I mean, yeah, the communication should have came to him through the coaches, but I can watch the game and see that he's not playing well, right? How many reverses have we seen go his way and he loses containment? I mean, the guy wasn't playing well, so he can complain about how it was communicated. The fact of the matter is these guys aren't producing, and if you're not producing, then you shouldn't be playing. There's no two ways about it.
AC, I know you got thoughts, man. Lay it on us.
Well, I don't like to speculate really either as to what AJ Green may or may not have said, but it definitely looks like, again, I don't read lips either, Nick. So it looked like he said what a lot of us think he said. Who knows if that's actually true, and who knows what's going on behind the scenes. And I know we're going to talk a little more Zac Taylor and the coaching staff in a little bit, but my mind kind of went to a little bit to what Mickey said there when I started seeing a disgruntled AJ Green, Carlos Dunlap voicing displeasure on how his demotion was handled. You've got Auden Tate's agent a couple weeks ago basically talking about a trade because he was a healthy scratch. You've got John Ross. By all indications, John Ross isn't being a problem about being a healthy scratch the last 2 or 3 games, so that's a good thing. But you're now getting this pile up of players that are kind of disgruntled about their role, lack of role, what have you. And I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried about, they keep talking about this culture that they're trying to build in the locker room and getting the right guys in there and all of that. But, you've got some of your best traditional players, a couple of your best traditional players this franchise has ever seen in Dunlap and Green, showing quite a bit of frustration. And yeah, it's to Scott's point. They're not producing, but I guess that's kind of just where my mind went a little bit with worrying about the state of the team and the coaching staff's handling of the players. And, in terms of what the team can get for Green, I think the value would be very minimal. But if you're able to maybe at this point, if he's really that angry against at the Bengals for his treatment and role this year, maybe you just get what you can for him. It becomes maybe a mid-round pick for next year, and that's when you start using it on an offensive lineman. I don't know. It sounds kind of not fair value overall for an AJ Green, but that's maybe where we're at with this thing.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering when I see him reacting that way on the sideline, and again, you're right. We're assuming that's what he said based on lip readers on Twitter or whatever. But if that is in fact what he said, I don't really understand what he's frustrated about, right? Like, is he expecting to get the ball thrown at him all the time? Like, if he's not open, which it doesn't look like he is, I guess I'm confused on what exactly he's expecting. Because, I mean, we're not going to force the ball to you every single time because, I mean, you're not open. So if he's not open, I please help me, gentlemen. Am I crazy in thinking here that I guess I'm confused on what exactly AJ wants here?
Nick, I know we talked about it before. This doesn't seem like AJ, but I would go back to, we've seen a couple of these instances now of AJ Green over the last couple of years, right? So we say, oh, this isn't AJ. He's not this prima donna. Up until this point, for the most part, yes. But I go back to last year and I look at, how hurt was he? Could he have come back, or was he holding out for his contract? And this offseason, remember his comment was regarding the franchise tag, he didn't want to play under it because he didn't have anything to prove. Well, he did have something to prove because he hasn't played much in the last 2 years. The last time we saw him healthy, he was having a fist fight on the field with Jalen Ramsey. So if you go back the last couple of years, we've seen a few of these things with AJ Green. And I'm starting to wonder if, as he's aging and his skills are declining and his body's starting to fail him, is AJ Green becoming a little disgruntled? And is AJ Green not aware of the fact that he's not what AJ Green once was? Because he doesn't appear to be on the field.
Mickey, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, Scott's pissed at the players, it sounds like. If you're not doing your job, but let's look at the reverse. Like AJ Green, he was the guy for so long here, gave everything he had for this team, and are we improving? Like, is this another Palmer situation where it's like these players are, lay it all out there, do everything they can, and they see it regress? Like, there's really, I don't know. Like, there's so much that we don't know.
True.
I'll throw a wrench in our show right now. I do follow AC on Twitter, and I'm glad he brought up his tweet before about, the moves in free agency and how everyone's hurt. But he also had some other interesting tweets praising a quarterback that he was really high on, coming in. And, could the Bengals have Joe Burrow's great, right? Everyone agrees Joe Burrow's great. Our line is what we thought it would be. We didn't really do anything from last year. And so it's proven to be what we thought it'd be. With a bunch of draft picks, could they have taken Herbert and still improved this team better? Like, are the players upset because, we're not doing the things to do to get better? Like, we have a shiny quarterback and we're still bottom feeders of the league. At what point do we take that next step? And so for these players that have been around for a while, tasted the playoffs, I understand that frustration. And I mean, we could say AJ Green's failing. Like, before, we would find ways to get him open. He wouldn't just be an afterthought in the offense. And I truly don't think that he's deteriorated to a point where he's, not a weapon anymore. And he didn't need much of a window to be open before to get the ball.
True.
And so if we're not even attempting those passes, I don't know. Like, I understand that frustration, just like I understand it from some of the other vets. And so I don't know. That's why rebuilding's tough, right? Like, there's going to be pain. The Bengals aren't good at rebuilding. Like, there should have probably, if this was truly a rebuilding, there should have been, much more drastic changes, right? Like, spending all that money in free agency and then leaving your offensive line the way it is it's kind of like, it doesn't make sense to me.
They're building the house in the wrong part. They're starting with the first floor rather than the basement.
Right. It's a miss for me. And so if I was a player, I'd be frustrated too. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard for a team to be this bad for so long. Like, statistically, you would luck into some good seasons, but the Bengals, man, they're good at being bad.
I was just asking what a basement is. We don't have those where I'm from. It's hard to argue with really the points that either of you presented there. I still think that the Bengals did make the right decision in getting Joe Burrow, and I think that is the guy that Zac Taylor envisioned running his system. Now, what you don't know is I think Zac Taylor had these expectations for AJ Green in this system, and either Father Time or AJ's skill set and what's left of it aren't really meshing with what the game plan is. And I know we're going to talk more about that a little later in the show, but there have been, I said this on last week's show, there have been some opportunities where AJ's been open and it hasn't been there. The play first week where he was wide open, Burrow missed him. Second week in Cleveland, he's in the end zone. He got one hand on the ball, other arms being held back in the end zone, wasn't called for a PI there. So there's been a couple of shots where his stat lines could have been, somewhat significantly improved here by a play here or there. But you look at what happened this last week, you look at, some of these really poor stat lines and you go, okay, is it one thing? Is it two things? Is it a myriad of things? I tend to think it's the latter. I think it's maybe a little bit of AJ's skill set declining, but also maybe he does feel that there is an improper usage of what he's doing. Maybe the fact that Burrow's spreading the ball out a lot more and he's not the guy that is always looked at 12 times a game, 14 times a game, like he was with Andy Dalton. Instead, he's getting 3 targets a game, 4 targets a game. And that combined with the fact that he doesn't want to admit that Father Time's catching up with him, maybe that's what's irking him as well. So I think there's a lot of things at play here and potentially even more, like Mickey said, behind the scenes.
I feel like you could just put this podcast on repeat from week to week, right? It's the same things, right? We talk about Burrow, we talk about AJ, we talk about the offensive line, it's like a revolving door of the same issues that keep cropping up for this team. So,
Nick, can we talk real quick about AJ's attempt at tackling or lack thereof on the? Did you guys see that video going around on Twitter where he appears to be running away from the ball runner?
I thought he was looking for a block.
Yeah,
that does. What
it looks that way.
Is what it looks like. Yeah, it's bad luck.
I saw Paul Dehner tweet that out during the game, actually. And you're like, wow, that's a really, really bad look. Especially, look, the ball was overthrown, and maybe he didn't know it was coming to him, but it's not the first time we've seen a ball overthrown to AJ Green where he's not prepared to receive it, right? We saw it all the time with Dalton. And then it was oh, crap, they threw it at me. And the other guy's running down the field. So to say I was surprised, I was probably more disappointed than anything seeing that play. But yeah, it's not the best of times if you're number 18 and Zac Taylor at the moment. So we'll see if things get patched up. And you bring up the whole Carlos Dunlap thing, and Zac Taylor's response last week was, I feel good about our communication with our players. Okay, well, that's 3 of them now. So I don't know. You might feel good.
He feels good about it. Yeah.
Right. So we'll see. What are your thoughts on AJ Green? Let us know. InsideTheJunglePod@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter as well at InsideJunglePod on Twitter. All right. We've been asking for it for the last few weeks for some Apple Podcast reviews, right? Because we want folks to know about our show. And so if you leave a great review, we're definitely going to read them here on the podcast. So if you got a moment, head on over to Apple. Just search for Inside the Jungle on Apple Podcasts. We got a great review this week from Jackson Ford. He calls it New Era. And he says, time to usher in a new era with the return of an old one. Great podcast. So Jackson, thanks so much for the review. Also, a good friend of the show, Cody Toomey, left this review. He says, glad to have the guys back together for the show. Great chemistry from the guys already is back, and always great perspectives on the team or even life at times. We haven't talked about life yet, but we certainly will be doing that. Must listen podcast for any Bengals fan. Glad I'll get a few hours of this each week again. Burrow brought the gang back out of hibernation. The 5th Beatle. He signs it the 5th Beatle. Oh, Cody, thanks so much for supporting the show and leaving a great review. Again, head on over to Apple Podcasts. You can find it at bit.ly/ITJApple. If you're watching us on YouTube, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode of our show, so that you get notified that we're going live every Tuesday night at 9:00. And not only are we on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, but now you can find Inside the Jungle on Google Podcasts as well. Search for Inside the Jungle there on that show. All right, let's do some shout outs. Shall we, gents? Mickey, I'll start with you. You got any shout outs this week?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out my brother-in-law, Tommy Huller. He's been around the show for a while. Could not wait to text me. It's probably first quarter. And all the text said was bold predictions. So rubbing it in my face. Plus, he gave me some, a little bit of insight that I'll share later in the show around, some of our topics later. But yeah, I'm gonna shout him out. I don't know if he's listening now, but he'll listen to this eventually. Thanks, Tommy.
All right. How about you, Scott? Beam me up. You got a shout out?
Yeah, Mickey, I think we all got pie on our face after those bold predictions last week.
You were feeling high on yourselves after what happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, that brought us back down to earth. Just a general shout out. Shout out to family and friends, especially those on the Facebooks. I know I shared the podcast on the Facebooks as you guys did as well. And, we are got quite the jump this week in likes and follows. So shout out to everyone on Facebook that liked and followed us.
Good stuff. How about you, Anthony?
Well, I won't take the one that you put on the screen just a minute ago, Nick. So I'll save that one. I've got a guy who follows me on Twitter, and I follow him on Twitter as well. His Twitter handle is @DaltonSignature, and he's a freelance graphic artist, and he's a giant Bengals fan. He does a lot of cool work. So if you ever want like cool wallpaper for your desktop or laptop or whatever that are Bengals related, he's doing giveaways of some of his graphic designs. He's got a cool one of Joe Mixon out there. I actually met him last year in Seattle, the week 1 game. We were hanging out downtown before the game, and I met him. Really nice guy. Does some really cool work, especially for Bengals related type of graphic design work. So @DaltonSignature, he's a good guy, and he does a lot of cool things with the Adobe, the Photoshop, all that good stuff that I'm good at.
Very cool. We'll have to check out his work on social media. Yes, Fatal content is in the building. He's watching us live on YouTube. Fatal, sorry about your heat, buddy. But Anthony's Lakers, well, they were champions, buddy. As much as I love seeing LeBron win another title, let me tell you. My shout outs this week. Can you get a sense that I'm not a big LeBron fan? Anyway, my shout outs this week. This is to @DragonBlazePro, Steven Reberg. He's the host of the who-dey bitching podcast. Didn't know there was a who-dey pitching podcast. That's pretty much every week, isn't it?
Yeah.
So shout out to you, Steven. Thanks for reaching out. And of course, Greg Luther, right? Greg has been a fan of our show for years, back when we were doing it a long time ago. Greg, thanks for tuning in and tweeting at us @Gregor09. Greg's always been a good fan of the show, so thanks for the shout out. Fatal, he's already blaming the injuries. Fatal's already blaming the injuries about the Miami Heat. Anyway, thanks for tuning in tonight, Fatal. Just a reminder, we do the show live every Tuesday night at 9:00 on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. So tune in, comment, have your say. Eventually, we're going to get the phone lines back up and running so you can hear the great voices of Fatal content. And I'm sure Cody will tune in every so often to have his say about the draft. So appreciate everybody tuning in. If you want retweeted or you want shouted out here on the show, follow us on Twitter @InsideJunglePod. Okay. I aptly titled this next segment, "What the hell is Zac Taylor doing?" Because I think we all are wondering that, right? I'm watching this game on Sunday, and I'm seeing Joe Burrow dropping back to pass. And I know they were down, but I'm seeing him dropping back to pass with nobody in the backfield with him, empty sets, and he's just getting pummeled, right? And I'm starting to wonder to myself, like, does Zac Taylor not see his quarterback getting absolutely crushed? Like, is he watching a different game than we are? And I'm sure you three are probably thinking the same thing. Like, what is happening here? So, Mickey, I will kick it over to you once again. What the hell is Zac Taylor doing?
I don't know, Nick. And and when you look at, so he was sacked 7 times, yeah?
Yeah.
How many of those sacks were from defensive backs?
I think it was a majority of them, right?
5. So what are we doing protecting our quarterback, right? Like the fact that, 5 times defensive backs are bringing down your quarterback, that's something that you should be able to adjust to. That's something that that aggressiveness could backfire on a defense, and we were not able to take advantage of that at all. I don't understand. We have to. A good coaching staff would first analyze your own team and find out your weaknesses, and then build your offense or build your decisions off of your weaknesses, and then try to match those up with your opponents. It seems like we're just assuming our players are going to do fine and looking at what we can do against the opponents, and that's just a bad recipe. So I don't know what any of the coaching staff is really doing.
Yeah, Anthony. Look, it's I don't know how many times you have to sit there and watch your quarterback getting drilled to make adjustments. And we always said that was like the downfall of Marvin Lewis, never made adjustments, right? Well, it seems like the same thing's happening.
It does and it doesn't. I've seen some examples where the Bengals have made some adjustments. You can go back to, the Jacksonville game where they had that streak of points scored in the second half and other things. But the thing that really got me was, look, you're at the end of the game. I understand you want to try and get some points on the board and whatnot. What do? You keep Joe Burrow in, you keep Joe Mixon in. And I think they ran the ball, 10 straight times?
Yeah.
And then you kick a field goal. To me, it's like, why don't you just have Finley in there? Why don't you just – I understand you want to try and get something positive, especially from your starting group. But at that point, like you said, 7 sacks, Burrow's getting hit all day. I didn't really understand the mindset there. The other thing that, kind of to Mickey's point about the blitzing defensive backs, the blitzes by the linebackers and getting pressure and sacks on Burrow that way, the blocking schemes are just I don't understand what they're doing up front. There are times when you have Drew Sample straight up on a defensive end and
right,
one-on-one blocking a defensive end. That's happened twice in the last 3 weeks, and guess what happens? Disaster, right? So I don't understand why not only are there not adjustments, but just what they're trying to do scheme-wise in their blocking schemes. I sometimes I look at them like that they don't even have a chance to be successful on this play based on what the defense is showing them and based on what the personnel is they have on the field. So I don't know what Zac Taylor's doing. I don't know what Jim Turner's doing. I don't know what Brian Callahan is doing, but it is not working, especially on the offensive line.
How many times have we seen Sample one-on-one with the defensive end this year, right? I think Bosa torched him. I think Myles Garrett torched him, and then we saw it this weekend with Campbell, right? I don't know. Well, it might not have been Campbell, but either way, it was a defensive end against Sample, and you're like, how? Why? At least
one-on-one.
Right. Like you would think maybe that you use a tight end to just chip the defensive end and let your tackles put. I guess the tackles are so worried about the interior line, they've got help there too. So, Scott, what the hell is Zac Taylor doing?
I don't know. I think AC hit on it. And that's my biggest complaint with Zac Taylor is, the scheme of the offense, the play design that can go to him. It can go to Callahan. It can, you can work Jim Turner in there as well from a blocking scheme. I know Burrow prefers the empty backfield, which is probably why they're going with it, which is fine, but they've got to have plays. They've got to have plays designed then to get the ball out quick or something, because right now it's getting him killed. So, I didn't mind the Zac Taylor hiring. What I mind is the Zac Taylor play calling, because the only time he's called plays that I know of was when he was at UC under Tommy Tuberville. Yeah. And that UC offense was not very good. So why he's calling plays in the NFL, I'm not sure. And thus far, I haven't seen anything to make me think he can't call plays. So I think very soon here, Zac Taylor has to decide whether or not he's going down with the ship and continue to call plays, or is he going to hire an offensive coordinator that can actually call plays and just let him be the head coach? So to answer your question, Nick, I have no idea what the hell he's doing.
I guess when you look at the situation, right, and you see we can throw the Jacksonville game out. It's kind of an outlier at this point. Like we know Jacksonville's not great. They're probably going to be very close to us as far as the draft order next offseason, right, gents? So you throw that game out of the way and you see where this team has struggled. And it's clear the offensive line is just not up to snuff. And they've they've had a rotation at right guard. They seem to have figured it out with Redmond. We finally saw those flags come back to get us there with Redmond this weekend. But you can point so many fingers at this offense, right? Whether it's the play calling of Taylor, the offensive line coaching from Turner, and Callahan. I feel like he's almost getting away with he's not doing anything. Like, nobody's pointing a finger at Callahan.
Because no one knows what the hell he does.
Right. So maybe this is, I'm just a guess here, but maybe you say, hey, do you have any ideas? Because we're out of them.
Yeah, the thing that I've noticed too, Nick, is, look, it's no secret that Zac Taylor wanted to bring some form of the Sean McVay offense over here, and he's tried to do that. What the Rams were able to do, I pointed out a couple weeks ago about their extra coaches and stuff. That's part of the equation. But what do they have? They have a great offensive line, right? And so what they're able to do is they're able to do the spread offense, keep just 5 offensive linemen in there. By the way, one of which is Andrew Whitworth, one of the best rated tackles by PFF this year. And they're able to run their offense and not have issues with protection and whatnot. So on one hand, I give Taylor a little bit of a pass because the Bengals offensive line does not have the talent up front. On the other hand, he and Jim Turner and Brian Callahan were the guys who vouched for that group, right? They were the guys that said, we think they're better than a lot of you think, and you guys are all dummies for thinking that we have issues up front here. And so in that respect, I kind of got to blame them, right? So it's like a whole chicken or the egg type of thing here, right?
We got an interesting question in our chat here on Twitter. This is from Mickey's brother-in-law, Tommy, who also is very excited that he got a shout-out. He says, whose press conference do you loathe more, Marvin Lewis or Zach Shula not done? Wow.
Shula.
I'll be the first to admit, like, I have not listened to a whole lot of Zac Taylor press conferences. I listened to a lot of Marvin's, and those were bad. So I'll leave it to you three. Whose is worse?
Scott, what do you? I mean, I don't watch them either, right? Like,
I haven't either.
So I'm
Mick or Anthony.
Here's what I do know though. Zac Taylor doesn't have that awkward laugh, and he doesn't treat the media like they're below him. So from that standpoint, I have to say Zac Taylor's are better. You know, Marvin had this arrogance about him as if he had won something. At least Zac doesn't have that. Well, so from that standpoint, I give it to Zac, I guess. I
mean, if you count being the winningest coach in franchise history, he kind of did, but that's not saying a lot at the moment.
It is many playoff wins as all 4 of us.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have any thoughts on that, Anthony?
I mean, I remember Marvin's pressers from the later years when he was just like worn out and he's like, why are you asking these questions? Yeah. So from that respect, I guess I would, if I was given this wonderful option of hearing both of their post-game press conferences, I would say Zac. At least Zac kind of comes at some of his answers with confidence, but I don't know if he's feigning confidence or what. I made a joke earlier about the whole, not time to hit the panic button yet. Well, you're 3-19-1 or whatever at this point. And I don't know if not now, when, right? And you got people wanting to be traded supposedly, and I don't know when you hit the panic button, if ever.
Yeah, Hugh Jackson would be very happy with that coaching record.
Yeah, you're right. Man, if I had a 3-19-1 record, even in like in Madden the video game, I would have been fired. So I don't know. Yeah, when he says don't press. Usually when you hear a coach say, don't press the panic button, it kind of means that I think they're panicking a little bit. And he should be. I mean, look, you've had a year and we'll say a quarter, and it's not going as we had hoped. So let's move on to Indy, shall we? Ben in the chat says, Jaguars beat the Colts. Maybe we can too. Well, the Colts over the weekend losing to Cleveland, so they are coming into this game 3-2. They've also got some injuries as well, due to the Colts. But we're facing Phillip Rivers, who is a pretty savvy vet himself, So let's look ahead, shall we? The game is in Indy, correct?
Yes.
Yep. So another road game. I don't know. The Indiana has some weird things going on where I think they can have fans there. So it's not like it's gonna be a packed Lucas Oil Stadium, but I mean, where do we go? Are we? I think the line was 8. You said, Mickey.
Yep,
Which
8. That's bad. That's bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was 13 against the Ravens, and we were all kind of questioning that one. But I think the bookmakers, they knew what they were talking about. So maybe 8's not so bad, right? I mean, should this be a more competitive game for the Bengals?
Should be. I mean, I think it will be. The Indy's not Baltimore. It's not a division game. Yeah, I mean, we totally just peed down our legs in the last game. I don't expect that to happen. I think we're going to go back to seeing Joe Burrow throw the ball a ton. So I think it'll be closer.
What are the chances we see AJ Green inactive this weekend? He's got a hamstring injury. We did get a tweet tonight from AJ Mithen. Says his bold prediction is that AJ Green's hamstring is going to be just fine. What do you guys think?
They got that secret sauce that healed Randy Bullock's calves.
Right. Ben says no fans in any domes. Well, I'm pretty sure that roof can open. So,
Can it?
Lucas Oil?
Yeah,
it can open.
I don't think it can.
Oh, what should we make a wager on this one?
Oh, I like it.
All right, you figure that out, Mickey. Anthony, this should be more competitive, right?
I think so. Yeah. So I got on one hand a really awesome statistic. The Bengals are 0-15-1 on their last 16 road games. That's
awesome.
That's a ton of fun. However, I mean, is this truly really a road game? I have actually made that drive from Indy to Cincinnati. It's not very long. So, I don't know if that's really considered a true road game. And then the other facet, the quarterbacks, Phillip Rivers, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions this year. And he did not play very well last week. So, he is a Hall of Fame type of player, but he has not really played like it this year. And I expect Joe Burrow, being the competitor that he is and the workaholic that he is at his craft, I expect him to come back and play, for lack of better words, pretty pissed off and put up a lot of statistics. Whether that leads to a win or not, I'm not sure, but I think we'll see a lot better performance this week. Yeah,
Indy is closer to us than Cleveland, so
yeah,
that's a very, very quick trip. Did you get an answer there, Mick? Am I right?
Oh yeah, it's 2 panels. It opens up. takes about 9 minutes. Scott owes you $100.
Yeah,
nice.
Good thing we didn't make any bets.
He owes you the me jersey. That's what he owes you.
He owes me another Brandon Tate picture.
Yeah, there you go.
I think I found the only one.
No, what you need to get me, Scott, is you need to ship me some tater tots.
That was going to be if you lost, you were going to have to eat a plate of tater tots.
Oh man.
From your cargo shorts.
My cargo shorts, which I don't even own anymore. All right, so let's do some bold predictions, shall we? Of course, I don't have the audio prepared. I'd be a good host, but I don't have it prepared. So if you're listening to the podcast, you'll definitely hear the bold predictions audio from Uncle Rob. AC, I'll start with you.
Ooh,
give me your bold prediction for this week against the Colts.
I will say Bengals put up over 500 yards of offense this week as a rebound.
Wow. That is a big one. Looking at the stats from this past weekend, and they had 205.
Yep. So expecting just a little bit of a leap.
That's a big old jump. And by the way, statistically, I believe before the Cleveland game, the Colts had the number 1 defense in the National Football League. I don't know if that's changed since that game, but I'm going ahead and assume it has. But yeah, 500 yards that's a big shout there, AC.
Lonely out on this limb, Nick. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Scott, give me your bold prediction.
Indy does still have the lead for yards per game at least at 266. So that would double it. Boy, I fell flat on my face and made a fool of myself last week with these. Nothing new there, but here's my bold prediction. John Ross is going to be active this game. Now I'm not gonna go out on any limbs and say he's going to do anything, but I'm gonna predict that he is going to be active.
All right. Wow. That's another bold one. He's been inactive the last couple of weeks. So that would be a big bold prediction. Fatal Content in the chat says bold prediction 200 yards receiving from T. Higgins.
He's stealing my thunder.
Oh, is that where you were headed?
So I wasn't going to go 200. I was going to go $150 and 2 touchdowns. The most that he's had in a game is 77. So, just about double his biggest game. 200 is impressive, but I'm going to go $150, 2 touchdowns for T.
My bold prediction for this week is that, man, I will say, I don't want to steal one from a few weeks ago, but it's so appropriate. The Bengals don't have any sacks given up this weekend. Right? I mean, they just gave up 7 after a week where they didn't give up any. Technically 1. But, you guys am I crazy for using that one?
Yes.
So we'll see. Cody in our chat. Cody Toomey tuning in a little late tonight. Bold prediction. He quits on the team again. He's talking about AJ Green. Cody has let it be known in the chat the last few weeks that he believes that AJ is washed up. And yeah, he said it 3 weeks ago. So there you go. So we want to hear from you, your bold predictions. Make sure you tweet at us, hashtag bold predictions, and let us know what crazy things are going to happen between the Colts and the Bengals. All right, so we'll do score predictions now. Anthony, I'll start with you. What's going to happen in this game? What's actually going to happen in this game? Colts giving 8 to the Bengals.
I think Bengals cover. I'm not confident in them in picking them to win. I know that may not be a popular thing, but just based on what I kind of saw last week against a quality opponent, Indy's up and down, but they are still a pretty quality opponent at this point. So I will say 27-21 Indianapolis.
Okay. By the way, Anthony, the only one, correct me if I'm wrong, Jens, I'm pretty sure he was the only one on this panel to predict a loss, right? Last week.
Yeah, he hates the Bengals.
Right. Yes, that is absolutely correct.
How about you, Mickey? Give me your score prediction.
I agree with AC. I think the Bengals cover, but I have them losing 34-30.
High scoring affair there in Indy. Scott?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same boat as everyone else. I do think they cover. I'm looking here at what Indy's done. They've beaten a couple bad teams, lost to the good teams. They lost to Jacksonville. I take that back. I do think they cover. I'll go 31-27 Indy.
Man, I don't know in the history of this show we've ever had 4 people pick a loss, right? I don't think it has ever happened, but I think this is the time. This is the time. I'm going to go loss as well. I hate saying it. Here we're 4 episodes in, and I don't think I've ever picked a loss. But after what I saw against Baltimore, after what I saw last week with Dunlap voicing his displeasure, AJ voicing his displeasure, I think this thing's going downhill pretty quickly. And so I'm going to go for a loss as well. I don't think the Bengals cover. I'll say they lose by 10 or more. I'll go they lose 35-17. Yeah.
Doesn't that pretty much guarantee a win for the Bengals if we all go against them?
That's a good point. Remember a few years ago, I think it was the year they started 8-0. Or it was some crazy streak they were going on. We made, remember 15, Tim Bates? Yeah. We made, back when Tim was on the show, and he kept picking them to lose, and we made him pick them to lose because they kept winning. So, Tim, if you're listening, we need you to start picking some W's because maybe that's gonna change our fate here. Cody in the chat says Zach has lost the locker room. Fatal responding with the Bengals have broken us. We have no courage and don't have reason to. We do get a pick or a bold prediction here from Ben. He says bold predictions: 2 Bengals pick sixes, 1 for Bates and 1 for Carlos. Well, Carlos has to be on the field, Ben. I would say you go back to your question from earlier, Mickey. You were asking one Bengals player that you thought played well this weekend. I actually thought Jesse Bates played pretty decent. I didn't see any glaring missed tackles from him like I did, a few weeks ago against Cleveland. He's been for me a pretty good safety back there.
Yeah, solid, but it gets lost in a sea of incompetence, I think.
Right. But we went a whole hour without even mentioning that once again, a tight end still torches this Bengals defense. That something's never changed, Anthony. We did this show for 4 years and we talked about it all the time. I think Andrews is still catching balls there in Baltimore on us right now. Especially that was so disappointing early on in the game, 3rd and long, and it was so easy for him to find Andrews. So anyway.
Yep. Those tight ends and those running backs that can catch. That's always been an Achilles heel. And gosh, I forgot about that one play, 3rd and 14 inside your own red zone. You let them get the first down, and then inevitably they score on a 3rd and goal. It's like, oh my gosh, really? So, but I think Bates has played well. I think William Jackson has played really well also. Their pass defense hasn't been terrible. It's just kind of been a little bit of the run defense, and then when they get a turnover, the offense isn't doing much with it. So,
yeah.
I
think I'm going to revise my bold prediction. I said they were going to give up no sacks. I'm changing it. I'm changing it because that's crazy talk. Because we know better. They're going to concede sacks. I'm going to say, though, the Bengals are going to be plus in the turnover margin. I think they'll force more turnovers than they give up. And that's quite possible because Rivers is a gunslinger. So I'm changing it. Don't quote me on it, but I'm going with the Bengals win the turnover battle this weekend against the Colts. Thanks so much for everybody watching us live tonight on Twitter and YouTube, and for the first time on Facebook. We really appreciate you tuning in. We do record the show live every Tuesday night. So if you want some Bengals chatter, this is where you got to come. You got to come and enjoy the show and have some conversation about the orange and black. So I'll start things off with the background king himself. AC, you got any final thoughts as we get out of here?
Not particularly. I guess just I'm getting harassed again by my little guy right at the beginning and right at the end, of course. But for me, the name of the game is progress. I think we all want wins. We all want all of that. But I thought last week was an opportunity for the Bengals to really kind of take some steps forward. Even in a loss, they could have really showed us some things. And to me, it was a really, really big leap backwards. So this is another quality team they're playing, and a good showing, maybe even a win, but a good showing in a competitive game, and showing that they've grown from that loss. To me, I guess that's one of the major things you can ask for at this point.
Well, as always, AC, I appreciate you being on the show. I know you got your hands full over there on the best coast, the left coast. You're enjoying that sunlight while we're enjoying the fall getting here with the early evenings, and you got that nice weather out there. So anyway, we appreciate it.
It was 90 today, bro.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Hot.
Yeah. Mickey, your final thoughts?
I'm gonna kind of twist it into a shout out. I can't believe no one else mentioned it, but it was good to see Dalton come in. Terrible injury to Dak, but it was good to see Dalton come in through a couple, great passes, great catches to get the Cowboys to win. The guy did a lot for the Bengals. Like him or not, it was cool to see him go on and find some success. So that's my final thought.
That's a good one too, because I'm pretty sure we're going to face him a little bit later on this season. So
that'll be an interesting game. It
will be definitely an interesting game. I think it'll be even more interesting, Mickey, when Dalton wins a playoff game with the Cowboys this year.
He's definitely got the team to do it with, right?
Well, defensively, they are real bad.
But they have an offensive line, which if you just focus on one side of the ball, you have a shot.
Well, they not really anymore. Their offensive line's decimated with injuries. I think both starting tackles are out for the year.
Yeah. But you still got that Ohio State running back that Mickey loves. Zeke.
I loved him in college. I don't know.
But yeah, that's a good shout about Dalton. And good to see him getting some action there in Dallas. As always, Mickey, appreciate you being on the show, bud.
Thanks, man.
Eventually, one of these days, our tournament paths will cross, and we'll actually be able to hang out and see one another.
It's true.
And watch our kids play some soccer. So
I bet it'll be pretty soon.
You're probably right. And by the way, congrats to see your daughter, man. She's tearing it up on the cross country track.
Oh yeah, she's got conference championships this week. She's the favorite, so it should be fun to see.
Nice. She definitely doesn't get the running from you, does she?
I'm quick burst. She just maintains her speed.
Oh, very cool. Always good to see, and appreciate you being on the show, bud.
Later.
Beam me up, Scotty. What do you got for your final thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to get pretty down on the Bengals after last week, but I go back, I take a look at the first 4 games. They played, they look good. Burrow looked good. I don't expect this to be something that continues. I expect to bounce back from Burrow and the Bengals as a whole. Like I said, I'm not predicting a win, but I do think you see a much better team than you saw last week. I think you see a team like we've seen the first few weeks of the season.
I hope you're right, man. I hope you're right. I'd love to see a win, Scotty. Beam me up with your me jersey, and appreciate you being on the show.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to pull the curtain back a little bit. We had a lot of fun before the show tonight. For the first 4 weeks of this podcast, right? Every time Scott joins in, we can never hear him. So we've got to do tech support right as we're running up to 9 o'clock, and we're trying to scramble. Why can't we hear Scott? Well, tonight he's the first one to join, and I can't hear him once again, right? And we're like running through the different options, and Scott's got to reboot his computer. His computer's from like Windows 95, so it takes him 12 minutes to reboot it. Well, Mickey hops in, and I can't hear him. And then it dawns on me, oh, yeah, that was on me tonight. So, Scott, I appreciate you, buddy. I give you a hard time about your gear, but you make it happen.
I'm starting to wonder if those first 4 weeks, if it wasn't just you, not my mic. So,
no.
Scott prints out the show rundown on his dot matrix printer.
Nice.
No, I look at it on my phone and I draw it.
Nice. Oh man, I had a lot of fun tonight with you gents, as always. I'm so glad we brought this show back. As much fun as it is to talk about soccer every week, and by the way, if you're not paying attention to that, it's been rough covering that team too. This is kind of an outlet to let me just have some more fun, shall we say, with the Bengals. So appreciate you three. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate everybody liking the show on Facebook and downloading and getting some subscribes so you don't miss a single episode. Make sure you do that. Again, we're in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss a single episode of the show. Well, that's going to do it. Episode 4 of Inside the Jungle. My thanks to Anthony Cosenza, Mickey Mentzer, Scott Bantel. I'm Seubs. Bengals fans, we will see you next week. Who-dey, everybody.
Who-dey.
Who-dey.